where was this performance in the first half? Fabian Reid helped himself to 2 goals. Shea Smith, his strike partner, also helped himself to 2 goals. And in the end, Arnett Gardens cruised to a 4-2 win over Mobay United. This was not the way the game seemed destined at half-time. Mobay, the better team over the first 45 minutes, but just did not kick on from there. And Xavier Gilbert, his team talk, worked better than Teagat Davis's did. And he was able to inspire his team to higher levels of performance, better use of the football, better decision making, and the precision that certainly they did not display in that first half. Arnett Gardens finished 3rd and go back to the CONCACAF, to the Caribbean Shield, where they'll be fancying their chances of repeating their victory from last year. Owen Gordon, the captain of Mobay United, disappointed. His team fell apart after the break. Appears as if whatever happened at halftime caused them to not be as good as they were in the first 45 plus minutes. At full time, Arnett Gardens 4, Montego Bay United 2.
This is CVM News at noon for Monday, May 26, 2025. I am Ronaldo Adams. Thank you so much for joining us. The Jamaica Constabulary Force, JCF, is dismissing the long-held belief that individuals must wait 24 hours before reporting someone missing. According to Sergeant Kayla Keane, the JCF is working closely with the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA, to implement faster, more effective strategies to help families recover missing children.
It was a very old practice, but we have discovered through research that the first 24 hours is the most critical part of a missing person investigation,
yes,
especially as it relates to children, because there's actually something that we do, it's called a risk assessment. So once you are under the age of 18, you're automatically a 30 risk, which means that you're high risk.
Okay.
So imagine being left alone as a 8-year-old for 24 hours.
Yes.
No, that's not allowed. That's illegal under the Child Care and Protection Act. So we have to act quickly.
Sergeant Keane also emphasizes that in today's technology-driven world, being aware of a person's whereabouts is crucial. She also stresses the importance of having recent photographs to aid investigators. While quick reporting is vital, the JCF is urging parents to teach young children their full names and the contact details of close family members.
Small children, unfortunately, some parents call them by their nickname to the point where they think that that is their name. So if you see them wandering and you call them by their correct name, they might not respond. Even know, which is not to be practiced also. Teach your children their correct parents' name,
yes,
and the number for their parents. So if they come to the station, we can easily contact you instead of you freaking out about this thing.
What's your mommy's name? Mommy.
Exactly.
Quick action from the police in neighboring divisions following a gunpoint robbery in Kingston on Saturday led to the recovery of a stolen vehicle. The shocker came when the team arrested a serving member of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, JCF, linked to the incident. Nika Lewis reports. Well, actually, we'll pick up that story shortly. President of the Incorporated Master Builders Association of Jamaica, Richard Mullings, is demanding a revisit of the much-touted Government Spark program and several national projects which he says have dealt local contractors an unfair hand, as he shared a range of issues impacting the local construction industry, from globalization and perceived deficiencies in government systems. Nika Lewis tells us more.
Grateful but not taking anything for granted is how the IMAJ president appeared as he addressed the gains and concerns since 2024. Richard Mullings says he spent the last year ensuring the survival of his members and their competitiveness in a market that affords some more privileges than others.
Construction continued on multiple hotels, especially resort properties on the North Coast. We have work in the medical sector from Cornwall Regional to the Greater Portmore Health Center, Spanish Town Hospital. We have work on 2 divisional headquarters for the Jamaica Constabulary Force. And many other projects. So yes, there are many opportunities, or were many opportunities in the past year. And from all indications, these should continue into the future. However, as most or many of us in this room already know, these projects were dominated by non-Jamaican firms.
Among the projects of marked concern is the government's multi-billion-dollar road rehabilitation initiative, SPARK.
Local contractors engaged on these programs maintain that they're not being dealt with fairly by both the main contractor and the agency charged with managing the projects. Some projects continue to be plagued by contentious issues such as distribution of work, evaluation and payment for work done, payment of substandard wages to our Jamaican workers.
Mullings maintains the role of the IMAJ for the future will hinge heavily on the management of national affairs, listing a raft of shortcomings, some from within government entities. He notes there's been a decline in skill set in the government agencies tasked with assisting in the area of construction and demands a review.
I mean, it should be common sense to us. If agencies are not managing even their local construction contracts efficiently, will there not be likely gaps in their management of these much larger contracts that involve foreign contractors and spend a significant portion of our budget?
He was speaking at the IMAJ's annual dinner and awards on Friday.
We pick up that story from earlier now. Quick action from the police in neighboring divisions following a gunpoint robbery in Kingston on Saturday led to the recovery of a stolen vehicle. The shocker came when the team arrested a serving member of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, JCF, linked to the incident. Nika Lewis reports.
What began as an armed robbery soon became a major operation, resulting in a twist. It was at approximately 11:10 p.m. Saturday that the police received a report of robbery with aggravation along Colleyville Avenue in Kingston 20. The complainant, a 19-year-old in-drive taxi operator, reported that he had been robbed at gunpoint by an individual who entered his vehicle and forcibly took control while it was in motion. He managed to escape unharmed and quickly alerted the authorities. His report to the Police Emergency Communications Center (PECC) triggered a rapid response, electronically tracking the stolen car to St. Catherine. It was here that officers from the St. Andrews South and St. Catherine South divisions moved in, intercepting the vehicle along the Dyke Road near the Jam World complex in Portmore. Inside the vehicle, police discovered the suspect, who ironically was identified as a detective corporal. A search recovered a Glock 17 pistol, 2 magazines, and 34 rounds of ammunition, all government issued. The suspect's police ID was also found in his possession. The car was transported to the Greater Portmore Police Station, where forensic teams processed it, collecting potential evidence. The Criminal Investigations Branch, CIB, has taken charge of the case, with further inquiries underway. The Police High Command has condemned the incident, reaffirming that any member engaged in criminal conduct will face the full force of the law. They also stressed their commitment to transparency, accountability, and ensuring that no wrongdoing is tolerated within the ranks. The High Command reminds members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force are entrusted with extraordinary powers, specialized training, and state resources, and as such, they bear an even greater duty to uphold the law with integrity and accountability. Nika Lewis, CVM News.
Jamaica's poverty rate fell significantly from 16.7% in 2021 to 8.2% in 2023, the lowest level recorded since 1989. Speaking on CVM TV's lead story, economist and executive director of the Caribbean Policy Research Institute, Dr. Damian King, acknowledged that while there are various factors to consider, the data clearly shows a substantial decline in poverty over the years.
One is that you will notice from the chart that the PIOJ had shared that the poverty rate jumps around a lot. That from when you look at every subsequent measurement, it goes up and down. So you have to be careful how you interpret the change from one measurement to the next, which is usually a 2-year span. You can't overweight that, which is what is being done now. When we say it was 16%, in 2021, in the middle of the pandemic, by the way, and it's 8% now. The second caveat is that this is, you can debate, what is the level of poverty? For most people's estimation, there are plenty of persons who are above this poverty line who are living in poverty. So you can argue that the real poverty rate might be 15% or might be 20%. But the reason why I start with the caveats, all of which are valid, is to say none of those caveats can detract from the fact that poverty is declining unmistakably over the last 20 years. That even with the fluctuations, even with the debate about what is the real incidence of poverty, what you are seeing is an unmistakable trend that almost certainly has cut poverty by less than half over the last 20 years.
The Equality for All Foundation, formerly JFLAG, has expressed deep disappointment over the actions of sitting Member of Parliament and Cabinet Minister Daryl Vaz for promoting the playing of a song widely recognized for advocating violence against LGBTQ+ individuals in Jamaica. Executive Director Glenroy Murray has highlighted a disturbing pattern of politicians across party lines resorting to homophobic dog whistles on the campaign trail and called for an apology from the minister.
It was just 5 years ago when similar kinds of statements were publicly condemned by both political parties. And so to see those kinds of words and the encouragement of playing a violently homophobic song happening unnecessarily on a political stage is distasteful, to say the least. I think that there needs to be some clear lines of engagement for what people are allowed to do at political rallies. I mean, obviously, these are big fanfares where people get excited. However, there has to be a certain level of decorum that we come to expect from our political leaders and how they should behave. I really am hoping that the minister will reflect on his words and issue an apology both to the community and to the Jamaican public at large. And also, I think that the Office of the Political Ombudsman really should send a strong message alongside both political parties that this type of behavior and these types of words on major political platforms should not be allowed.
We will return with our live discussion segment after this break. Welcome back. It's now time for our discussion segment. Human rights group Jamaicans for Justice has welcomed the verdict in the Mario Dean trial delivered after 11 years. However, the organization notes that while it represents a step toward accountability, the case continues to highlight the deep systematic failures within Jamaica's justice and law enforcement systems. Joining us now to discuss these issues is Executive Director of Jamaicans for Justice, Mikel Jackson. Ms. Jackson, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having JFJ on the program.
Wonderful. JFJ has spoken about deep systematic failures for some time now. What do you believe are the most urgent reforms needed in Jamaica's justice and law enforcement systems?
I think firstly we acknowledge that justice was delayed in this particular circumstance, but thankfully it was not denied. And I think after waiting some 11 years for justice to be realized for the death of her son, Mario Dean, Mercy Fraser is perhaps one step closer to getting some closure. But to be waiting 11 years is not good for the accused or the victim in this particular instance. So when we did a quick check, at least 18 instances of issues relating to administrative challenges, low juror turnout, resulted in 18 instances of the matter being delayed. I think it's important to firstly recognize that COVID occurred during the wait, and that would have delayed, at least one of the hearings from about late 2021 to early 2022. But there were several instances where the trial was delayed due to low juror turnout. And if you recall, we have been asking for some review of the Jury Act. That has not yet been done by the Justice Minister. So I think it is important. So the questions we can ask ourselves, how many people are exempted from jury duty? How do we ensure that private companies in particular are releasing their staff members so that they can serve on the jury? How are we increasing awareness among our citizens so that they are aware of their civic responsibility? But one of the things that were most egregious for JFJ was the underserving of juror summons during the trial wait. For example, when we reached out to the police leadership in St. James, we were told that there was a delay in getting the jury list. When we reached out to the registrar at the Supreme Court, we were told that no, the jury list was actually released to the police. And we wrote to Police Commissioner Dr. Blake, we didn't get any response. That particular instance was just egregious, if it is, so it suggested that there was not sufficient communication between the Supreme Court and the police personnel. I remember High Court Justice Bertram Morrison, when the matter was actually at St. James Circuit Court, saying that this is a national disgrace. And thankfully, Bertram Morrison had the matter transferred to the Westmoreland Circuit Court. And you saw where Justice Day was cautioning both the prosecution and the defense that, listen, we have to wrap up this particular trial in these coming weeks because justice cannot continue to be delayed for Ms. Fraser. So the jury summons in and the list and so on is something that we have to fix because it cannot be that a trial was delayed so many times due to that particular issue.
How do you think the justice system handled the investigation and the trial overall?
I think we have to laud the efforts of the Independent Commission of Investigations, INDECOM, because it's as a result of their good work that you manage to have the evidence being put forward. The matter of gross negligence, manslaughter is not an easy one. And we have to acknowledge the effort of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution in that respect. But it would be remiss of me to say that there are other issues that needed to be fixed. For example, communicating with the victim's family. In this case, Ms. Fraser, I remember in one instance when I reached out personally to the Supreme Court, it was at that time I was told that the trial was postponed. So you would have had Ms. Fraser traveling to court on a day where there was no trial being held. So, we laud the efforts, but I think we have to say you cannot have another family going through these issues. And I have to use Matthew Lee as an example. This young man was killed in 2013. His trial should have have commenced, I believe, last month, thereabout. But when we went to trial to observe, we were told that the matter was postponed until next year, 2026. Remember, I said 2013. Trial date again postponed until 2026. So Mario Dean's case highlighted systemic failures, but we do have other clients here at JFJ who are going through these issues, and we have to fix some of the administrative challenges. And as I said earlier, we have to move with amending the Jury Act.
With that being said, Ms. Jackson, what steps can the government take to ensure that similar cases are handled in a more swift and transparent fashion?
Firstly, I'm calling on Justice Minister, the Honorable Delroy Chuck, to give an update on where we are with the Jury Act. We have heard about, the reduction in the court backlogs from the court, and it's important that the government does not move with the mandatory minimum laws, because that will certainly worsen the situation. I think importantly, my board chair, John Clark, had called for a speedy trial legislation. How do we move with such a law where we have a constitutional right to a fair